We are live. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, everybody. I call to order the meeting of NVTA Finance Committee for Thursday, May 9th, 2024. We'd also like to welcome Chair Jefferson from Prince William County as a new member of the Finance Committee. So we welcome you. Let's start with number 7 first, since we do not as yet have a quorum.
Sure, Madam Chair. Our focus at this point of time is to invest in short-term and long-term securities. So short-term, with that I refer to as less than a year, and long-term refers to 2 to 3 years maturity profile. So let me break up the benchmark comparison chart. So this would give you a visual of how our benchmarks is stacking with compared to the other benchmarks. So there's a bit of turbulence in the market at the moment, which is causing the LGIP to fluctuate in their rates. But otherwise, our benchmark is pretty stable and is resilient in giving us a proper benchmark throughout the market profile. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
If I may add to that, for Mayor Olam and Chair Jefferson's information, we have a lot of investments in the portfolio that are earning less than 1%. When we bought those were good rates. So as those mature out of the portfolio, our blue line will catch up with our benchmarks. And I think, as Deb said, our portfolio is less prone to fluctuations like we're seeing with LGIP, and that's part of our long-term strategy.
Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, thank you very much, Ms. Sen and Mr. Long. Moving on to number 8, monthly revenue report.
I'll quickly go through the charts, because I think that's the easiest way to do it. So attachment A, so I made you have a packet. What do you get a packet? Oh, you have. Attachment A shows our 3 revenues, what we've received to date, where the trajectory based on what we've received to date will land us at the end of the fiscal year. There's a bit of a lag on sales tax. There's a 2-month lag between transaction happening at a counter and then the sales tax coming to the authority. The interstate operation enhancement program transactions, those are just based on a percentage of the fund balance at the state at a certain time. So we don't really have much predictability on that or an ability to make our own estimate. We take those numbers, basically handed to us from VDOT. The regional congestion relief is what is most commonly known as grantor's tax. And I know the counties and the cities all have grantor's taxes. I believe the town does as well. But you can see that being behind 35% is reflective of the economy, the commercial sector, the problems in the residential sector. But whilst it's down a large percentage, sales tax being up a small percentage, because sales tax is so big, actually kind of offsets that. So currently we are trending 1.33% above our projections for the fiscal year. And I think we're gonna land in a good place.
Thank you, Mr. Long. We now have a quorum, but I think we should finish with number 9, the monthly operating budget report.
Sure, that's pretty simple. We are 75% of the way through the fiscal year, and we spent 58% of the budget. But a lot of that is we've got large contracts that haven't started yet, such as the website modernization project.
Any comments or questions? Okay, moving back up to number 2. We have approval of the February 8th, 2024 draft meeting summary minutes. Are there any comments on changes? Do we have a motion to approve? Second, do we have a second?
I have a second, and I understand.
Oh, you can abstain. So all in favor? Opposed, abstained, Chair Jefferson.
And I'm a non-vote, so
No, no.
Well, she was temporarily appointed to the committee, so she could vote.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And, town members at the committee level.
See that you feel powerful.
And actually, Chair Jefferson, so that we actually have enough votes
Okay.
to pass this.
Alright.
Either of you can vote to accept the minutes, even though you were not at the meeting.
I will vote. Okay, thank you for the clarification. How do you vote?
yes.
Yes, okay, and you vote yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to number 3, begin our action items, website modernization, Mr. Longley.
This is a exciting milestone for us as staff. This contract is basically 2 fiscal years in the making. It was budgeted for $250,000. We let the RFP out in December of last year. We had 62 expressions of interest and 187 questions on the scope of work. Normally, when we do a procurement and we have 187 questions about the scope of work, it sends your finance people into a heart attack. Because was our scope that bad that we got that many questions? In actuality, after looking at internally and with the evaluation team, those 187 questions are more reflective of the multitude of ways you can bake this cake. It's basically, there's an art form to it, there's a style form to it. But there wasn't anything wrong with the scope of work. It was basically, there's just so many options. That did lead to a little bit of a delay as we answered all of those. So we also posted the procurement on our own website and posted it on the Commonwealth's EVA procurement notice system. So firms that register, to receive these type of proposals or RFPs got it. 17 firms submitted responsive and responsible technical price proposal. I think about half dozen or so firms had a problem with the proposal, so they weren't able to be part of that pool. We had 5 members on the RFP selection panel, 3 NVTA staff members, a staff member from BRE and a staff member from DRPT at the start, and then VDOT at the end of the process. She switched positions in between. Both of those organizations had recently done website modernization work themselves, so their input was very valuable. On February 20th, the selection panel did their first review of the technical proposals. They selected top 4 firms, and that was a unanimous agreement. Then the cost proposal were released for best value valuation. And then in accordance with the Procurement Act, State Procurement Act, we selected 2 firms for best and final negotiations. The negotiations were tailored to each firm, addressing specific questions that had their genesis from the selection panel. Following that process, the selection panel made the unanimous recommendation of HDR. So part of the award recommendation is number 1, it was consistent with the selection panel's final and unanimous recommendation for HDR. HDR actually proposed a new content management system, which I knew nothing about before this, and I know way too much now. But that was a lot of time was spent getting the authority staff and the 2 other members of the selection panel comfortable with that. And it went from something that was a question as to why are you proposing something that nobody else is, to, oh boy, that is a really good idea. And they told us the long-term implications to it. HDR is very knowledgeable about NVTA. They're doing work with us now. They created the Project Information Management System, PIMS, as well as the dashboard that you've seen demonstrations of, and is currently on our website. It's very successful cost negotiations, and some senior members from the PIMS team will be available on the website modernization. And I've said website modernization repeatedly, but this effort also includes a rebranding of the authority. Our artistic side, just right down that road. Note that our seal and stuff like that are very difficult to work with in some of the communication stuff that they put out. And everybody says it's a little dated, but so on. With that, if
Yeah, we don't care about you. We care about the logo.
With that, if the committee agrees, we will move this forward to the authority next month. I will note we are still in negotiations on the final contract term with HDR. I think we'll be able to resolve those. So this recommendation would be pending council approval. Council has given us some feedback to deal with HDR, but I am hoping we will settle those issues satisfactorily.
Any comments or questions?
How much? Could you just give a number?
Can
Can you get a number?
Yeah, it's, the budget's 200, the consulting phase of this contract, I'm sorry, the budget is 250. The consulting phase of this contract is coming in around 200. There is another 70,000, that's a 6-year maintenance portion, which actually comes out of a different portion of the budget. So we've got about 50,000 in contingency.
So it's within the budget,
Well,
that's the question. Yeah.
And it's a not to exceed. Yeah, okay. Do you have any more questions? Okay.
I think I'll put, yeah, well, this is good.
I just had a question about brand identity refresh. What is that?
It entails a new logo, new color scheme. Actually, while we have our communications manager here, Abigail.
Yes, so we are refreshing our look. So the logo was first adopted in 2014, I believe. This is the first iteration of the diamond logo. So we need expertise to come in and really turn that into more of a seal, more of a modern, kind of want to match the way the localities that we're representing are feeling, but that is a little bit past what we do here in-house, so we need some expertise from the outside. So we felt as if that would all come together as a package at the same time. As if we're redoing the website, we want those elements to all match up. So it just made sense to do everything all in one, but we're really focused more on updating the website so it's easier to use, user friendly, and with a higher focus on those aspects than the actual brand identity, but that will be part of, so the color scheme, the logo change, templates for presentations, all of that would be inclusive in this brand refresh.
Thank
And if I may, Mayor Michelle, additionally, what we have is we have 2 websites right now. We have our core NVTA website as well as a website for transaction. When we initially hired consultants to do action work, they created a website for that. We find that having 2 websites is difficult to maintain and very confusing. So the idea is to also hire a consultant to look to merge those into one site. So we have one central site for all our information, and to piggyback off of the brand identity, transaction has its own identity, the 6-year program has its own identity. So we want to update those logos to be a cohesive look and messaging scheme for NVTA.
Thank you.
I assume that if we have anything with the old logo on, that will be used up. It won't be thrown away.
No,
And I don't even know what that would be.
so
because-
you guys would use up things with the old logo, like notepads and all that stuff for switching over?
We actually don't have much of that.
You don't have adjustments, okay.
Yeah, we really don't.
Because this is like printed out.
Yeah, our letter, most times when you see our letterhead, it's coming off of the soft document, stationery.
But the brand refresh will still have the integrity of the brand we've really built over the years. So it's not going to be something that's so new that it just feels not like NVTA. So some of the stuff that could be residual would still make sense if used in the modern time, once we have the brand refresh.
You follow the question?
No, I don't. Yeah, good, thank you.
Any last minute comments or questions? Okay. Do we have a motion? Mr. Snyder?
Yes, I recommend authority approval of contract award for the website modernization.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to revenue projection update, FY 25 through FY 29.
Thank you, Mayor Rochelle. Every 2 years, we update our revenues and we add 2 more fiscal years to the ladder, if you will. This is in preparation of the authority determining projects for its 28-29 update to the 6-year program. So we're adding 28 and 29. We did a relook at 25 through 26. I'm sorry, 25 through 27. We do this on a 2-year cycle because our operating budget is so small. It really doesn't matter in terms of revenue. And we do put a lot of effort in this, so it's a way of conserving resources. I will note that the numbers that you are looking at here are 100% of the revenue. So this doesn't have a 30-70 split. That comes later. Factors we considered: multi-year economic pressures, rising inflation, interest rates, consideration of a possible recession resulting from domestic and international triggers. We've all watched the news. We all know that things are going to be potentially rough in the next couple of years. Problem is we don't know which year. And we don't know if it'll be 1 year or span 2 fiscal years. But we do our revenue estimates in such a way that one of our highest priorities is the board will never have to look to defund projects because we missed the revenue projection by a large one. We now have actually 20 years of sales tax revenue or sales tax history, which is our largest revenue, prior to the authority coming into funding processes in 2014. And of course, we have 10 years of history of the authority's revenue line. We also get the Northern Virginia Transportation District transfer. The 20 million is a flat dollar amount. That doesn't change. That's set in legislation. And the Interstate Operations and Enhancement Program, that is an estimate that comes from the Commonwealth. So NVTA staff focus on grantors and sales tax. For the next steps, these numbers feed into our next action item, which is the pay-go analysis, which is when things get really fun because that tells us how much money we have to put towards projects in the future. With that, I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you. Comments or questions?
I just have a question, education district transferring, so that's set. So that is not changed with inflation, or is that something?
That was one of the first attempts by the General Assembly to give us restoration from the 2018 diversion of authority money to WMATA.
Gotcha.
Not ideal because, yes, it's subject, it's less valuable.
Alright.
Comments or questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
I'm very,
You
I'm very good.
can read the.
I been that authority. Yes. I move that the finance committee recommend Northern Virginia Transportation Authority adopt fiscal year 2025 to fiscal year 2029 revenue projections.
Thank you. Do we have a second? All in favor? Opposed, abstaining, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to Regional Revenue Fund, 829 pay-go funding.
And this is where the fund really starts. So we took the numbers that were just approved for recommendations to the authority. The total regional revenue, 70%, is obviously the 70% cut that can be used towards project funding. I will step through some of these items. Added to that amount is the interest earnings off of our own portfolio. We estimated 20 million, and actually in kind of the inverse world that as CFO I live in with the authority, we are hoping that the portfolio will be smaller in 28 because projects will have been completed, things will have sped up. plus there's a safety margin in there, obviously, for fluctuations in interest rates, et cetera. The most interesting aspect on this table is the taper release fund balance adjustment. For Mayor Olem and Chair Jefferson, on our revenue estimates, we do what we call a taper. In that as we get to the out years, we purposely, even though we have a number in mind, we purposely dial it back a little bit to give ourselves a safety margin. That dialed back money has to come back into the process at some point. And so we do that through this line. Last month, the authority adopted the regional revenue fund budget for fiscal 25, and this same line was there, but it was there at a number of 94 million. The reason for the $20 million difference is because we used 20 million of that in the last 2-year cycle. So this is where I've talked about the auditors with board appropriation and all. They want us to have very strong controls to make sure that the authority as a body doesn't end up approving more projects in the future than we can afford. And this is kind of the feedback loop on that. Also in this number is when a project closes out and it doesn't use all of its money, it comes back in through this mechanism. Or in the instance where there's project cancellation or withdrawal, it will come back through this mechanism as well. The rest of the line items here are debt service, operating budget transfer. All of these are projections. None of these are a budget commitment, but we have to put a number out there because we're making 5 and 6 year projections. So those numbers will be perfected as part of the annual adoption of the operating and regional revenue fund budget. So right now, they're just really there as placeholders. As an example, we don't know what's going to happen with PDP, BRT, but we're kind of setting an idea that the authority may want to do something more with that project, the BRT regional planning project. And so we've put 8 million in there, but that is not a budget action. That is just a way to get to the project funding number, which is 381 million for fiscal 28, 315 million for fiscal 29. The reason for the big difference is that 74 million that's looping back. We always loop that money back into the first year of the 2-year cycle. I think I've gone through the pay-go estimation analysis. But with the authority adoption of these numbers, they would then go to the Technical Advisory Committee, PCAC, and the PPC for as they look at the staff recommendations for projects, looking at a July target of authority approving the new slate of projects for 28 and 29. We do have some risk mitigation features that we use. Number one is we have not proposed any use of the working capital reserve, and that's 120 million. Out year revenue estimate tapers have been reestablished. Again, for our new members, when COVID hit, we used that taper because our revenue estimates were dropping off precipitously. So we used that taper, brought it forward, and used it, I guess, for the 26, 27, or 27, 28 program, 26, 27 program. And so we've reestablished the tapering because we're kind of flattening out. We don't anticipate anything that's bigger than another pandemic. We also have the ability with the standard project agreements, the appendices in there have cash flow schedules that as they come through, we can tell project sponsors that this is a more realistic timeframe for us to have the money to make your reimbursements. We've never had to do that, but it's there for us. And ultimately, with the authority's outstanding credit rating, we can take short-term loans or even issue bonds to make up the difference. So we're very comfortable in the numbers. We're also very comfortable that even if something very negative were to happen, the authority would not be in a position where, because of finances, it has to be fund projects. course, we can't predict anything that the General Assembly may do. With that, I'd be happy to respond to the question.
Comments or questions? First of all, thank you to staff. Congratulations on maintaining very strong outlook, very strong credit rating with stable outlook. And that is, if I'm not mistaken, the highest that rating that this type of an organization can get.
Yes,
In order to have more, would we need taxing authority?
exactly.
Okay.
That's the exact difference.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to clarify that. Any questions or comments for Mr. Long? Okay, then would someone like to read the suggested motion?
Madam Chair, I recommend for the adoption of the regional revenue fund.
All in favor? Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. And moving on to our last item in the discussion area, early outboarding of regional transportation planner. Mr. Long.
I'll be very succinct with this. Most jurisdictions with thousands, tens of thousands of employees actually budget an FTE number, that is a full-time equivalency for a person. The authority has never done that because with 17.20, we don't really need to. However, we have an opportunity, and under our policies, we can do this, which is to use the recruitment pool of our last hiring of a regional transportation planner, use that pool to bring somebody on board right now rather than wait until July. And so this is a disclosure for transparency purposes, since I'm a lot of you leaders may be used to FTE counts. We just want to make sure that everybody's aware of what we're doing. We have a very good candidate, and actually who accepted employment, and is going to start on a part-time basis as she phases into moving down here from New Jersey. And with that, we save a lot of senior management time, we save recruitment costs, plus we have had to repeat recruitment attempts 3 times in the past to find somebody. So we had a very good pool this time around, and just want to let it go.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Any questions or comments? Chair Jefferson, any questions?
So there's no action on that, we just wanted to.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Longy. NVTA update, Ms. Backman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do not have an update for you at this time.
Okay,
I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you to staff for your hard work. As I said, we really appreciate the magnificent credit rating plus stable outlook. Is there any other business to come before the committee? Okay, then we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.